Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened the courageous people of Russia who have taken to the streets to protest Russia's invasion into Ukraine. In fact, anyone who is caught telling the truth by saying that Russia invaded Ukraine rather than spewing the propaganda line that it's just a military operation will face 15 years in prison. And so what really shocked me, especially when it came to the amount of courage necessary to do this, was a recent story involving a producer for Channel 1 in Russia. This is a state-owned channel. It's state-sponsored television. Russia is the majority stakeholder in this channel. And during a live broadcast, one of the producers decided to crash the set to protest Russia's invasion. So on Channel 1, a woman ran out live with a poster. In fact, we have video of this. Let's take a quick look.
Российский премьер подчеркнул, надо усилить сотрудничество в рамках союзного государства, а на совещании в правительстве обсуждали, как сохранить доступность лекарств.
Man, so that anchor was not distracted at all. That was kind of impressive. However, I love the fact that the producer decided to do this. She's been working for Channel 1 for quite some time. And feels a great deal of remorse for towing the Russian propaganda line, not just in regard to the recent invasion, but the annexation of Crimea. So for those of you who are wondering what she was saying, apparently she shouted, "No war, stop the war. Don't believe the propaganda, they're lying to you." Also, the sign said, "No wars," you can read because it's in English, but it also said Russians against war. And if you're wondering who she is, at first, I wasn't going to release her identity, just hoping that we wouldn't help the Russian government find her and arrest her, but she's already been detained, unfortunately. The anti-war protester who crashed the news broadcast is Marina Ovsyannikova, an editor at Channel 1. She says, and by the way, her legal defense foundation is going to defend her against charges of discrediting the Russian armed forces. She's already at the police station. And what we know is that, again, she feels a lot of remorse, Cenk. What is currently happening in Ukraine is a crime, she said. Russia is a country aggressor. All responsibility for the aggression lies on the conscience of one person, Vladimir Putin. My father is Ukrainian, my mother is Russian. Unfortunately, for the last several years, I worked at Channel 1 promoting Kremlin propaganda, and for that, I am very ashamed right now. I am ashamed that I allowed lies to be told from TV screens, that I allowed Russian people to be zombified. We stayed quiet when all of this was just getting started in 2014. That was the annexation of Crimea, of course. We didn't come out to protest when the Kremlin poisoned Navalny. We continue to quietly watch this inhumane regime. Now the whole world turned away from us. And just one final point I want to make. I want you to see what happens to protesters in real time. Okay, here is a man filming the protesters. Notice how even individuals who might be supportive of Russia end up getting detained by police.
За активистов вообще.
Вы за активистов?
За активистов, конечно.
Я просто хотела спросить, как вы думаете, если здесь вот просто сказать два слова, меня за это сейчас арестуют или нет?
Вас уже задерживают. С ума сойти. С ума сойти. Вы это видели, нет?
Вы снимаете только оппозиционеров, да?
Всех снимаю, всех
снимаете. Ну а вот у кого есть другое мнение, вы тоже их снимаете?
Конечно, всех снимаю.
Ну а тех, кто, например, не выходит на митинги и кто считает, что военная операция, которую развернула наша страна, вот таких снимаете?
Да, мы все мнения показали.
Ну вот я тоже хочу высказать тогда свое мнение.
Скажите.
Меня устраивает то, что...
Это шок-контент. Человек пришел сказать, что ее устраивает.
So in the very end, there's a second woman, and it's based on how she started her statement, it seemed like she was supportive of what Russia is doing, but they rounded her up anyway.
Well, that's what happens in tyrannical governments. Do they really care who's saying what? Just want to make sure there are no protesters They're not interested in your opinion. They're not, even if you're supporting them. Off you go, off you go. We're in the middle of tyranny here. And so, by the way, later she'll say, no, I was on the Russian side, but a lot of them will say that so they don't get a 15-year sentence. And will they listen to her? Who knows, who cares? The only person who matters in Russia is Vladimir Putin. And so this is as anti-democratic as it gets, obviously. Anyone that supports these kind of actions obviously hates the idea of democracy and freedom. And it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle they think they're on or they're pretending to be on. But there isn't a single progressive in the world that would see that video and think, oh, I think the Russian government might be doing the right thing.
And remember, look, when Putin says he will throw you in prison for going against him, he means it. I mean, there were activists back, I believe in 2012, they went into a Catholic church to protest, and the women were immediately arrested, and they served 2 years in prison as a result of that. In this case, Putin is threatening people with 15 years in prison if they go against his propaganda in regard to the invasion.
And it's not like he hasn't poisoned people before. So no, it's complete and utter oppression in Russia. That's not in any way, shape, or form a regular democracy. And so in a democracy, you can speak out against the government. Obviously you can't, you just saw it on tape, right? And so finally, I just want to give a shout out, not just to Marina Ovsyannikova, but also to every Russian protester. The rest of the world loves you. And not because you're going against Russia. We had protests here in America too when our government was doing the wrong thing in invading Iraq. That didn't mean that we're against America, and it doesn't mean you're against Russia. You do it out of love for Russia and out of love for humanity, and we all know that. And we think you're the bravest people in the world. So thank God for the Russians standing up to Putin. But honestly, much easier to do it in America. So I went to a whole bunch of Iraq war protests, and I was fine. I spoke out against the Iraq war endlessly on the air. Yeah, they attack you in a lot of different ways, but ultimately you're totally fine. But they're taking their life into their own hands, and just the bravest people on earth. And thank you for supporting your fellow man and your brothers in Ukraine. And yes, and finally for supporting justice. Yeah. Bravest people. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.